Hi there, welcome to the Drug Patent Book. I am Tahir Amin, a co-executive director at the Initiative for Medicines Access and Knowledge. I'm a intellectual property attorney of over 20 years experience. This database looks at the top 10 selling drugs in the United States as of 2021, and we help provide transparency around the numbers of patents that are filed and granted in relation to these products. We hope that it will help policymakers but also patients and anybody else interested in this subject to better understand how the patent system is working and how it is impacting our drug pricing and competition. And I'm joined today by my esteemed colleague, Joe Fortunak.
Tahir, thank you for the brief introduction. And let me tell you a little bit about myself and how we came to pull all of this together. I am a veteran of the pharmaceutical industry. I am currently a professor of chemistry and pharmaceutical sciences at Howard University in Washington, D.C. I'm also the CEO of a small startup pharmaceutical company. And prior to joining Howard University, I spent over 20 years in big pharma companies.
We compiled this database for a number of reasons. We desperately need a transparent overview of how pharmaceutical companies are patenting their blockbuster drugs. A lot of patent information is not always available, and in fact, in many ways, particularly when it comes to drugs, it's a closely guarded secret that the industry tries to keep. So without further ado, Joe and I are going to take you on a little tutorial that will explain what the drug patent book is and the various features that will help you use it. So just to get started, these are the top 10 selling products as of 2021 in the United States.
We've got a range of things here. These are the top 10 drugs in the United States, but they run the gamut of indications from cancer to HIV to immune diseases such as arthritis and various other indications like cardiovascular disease, preventing blood clots and strokes. And the contents of these landscapes are also very interesting because they cover the very different types of subject matter that patents claim within a specific drug.
And you'll see here in the database, we have provided a filter. For example, with Biktarvy, what you do is you just click on it, you get all in the database, you'll get all the patents that we have found that are associated with Biktarvy. So when you click on Biktarvy, these are the patents that you will see. And you can actually also filter it out by the actual condition that it treats. So if you were interested in HIV, you'll see, as Joe mentioned, that Biktarvy treats HIV. And you can do that for the various other drugs as well. So for example, Humira is primary, and these are the primary conditions that these drugs treat. We've listed the conditions, only the primary conditions. So that's just a simple way of filtering around the database. You can do it by the drug name, you can do it by the conditions treated, and you can do it by the assignee. For example, AbbVie is associated with Humira and Imbruvica. Those are its two top-selling products. So Joe, from your perspective, why is a database like this so important?
My training as a scientist, I find it very difficult to search for patents. If you're not a patent attorney, I would suspect that it's difficult for you to search for them as well. You can't go to some database or you can't go to a search engine and just say, show me all the patents on Biktarvy. And they just show up. And when you look at the front of a patent, its title isn't going to say, I'm a patent that covers Biktarvy. There's a lot of difficulties in doing this searching, especially when we're talking about multiple different types of technologies that are patented.
That's a really important point, Joe, and that's really why we wanted to do this. One of the fundamental problems is trying to identify patents that relate to a product. Because they're written in a particular way, you have to have a certain level of expertise to understand the science that goes with it. Just to carry on and go through some of the other features of this sort of the main part of the database where you can filter out and play around with it, you can actually search by patent number. So if you actually know a patent number already that may relate to one of these drugs, you can actually type it in. So for example, if I we can see in the view here, you've got 739, 693, too, and you can actually narrow in and get the burn. This is a simple feature. We're connected to Google Patents, so when you click through the patent, you can actually go through to the patent itself as provided by Google Patents, and there you can actually search through the patent itself. And we also can search by, for example, if you want to do patents filed in a particular period, you can actually click on here and set your parameters. So if you wanted to know patents filed, for example, in anywhere between a particular period, you can actually click through and enter those variables in here. And also when patents may be expiring. The main patents on Humira were going to expire in 2016. So what has been the patent activity since 2016? Has AbbVie filed other patents since the main patent was going on? Well, let's have a look and see if we can figure something out here. So if I look at 2016, and then we'll see let's see, August as of now. So here we go. These are patents that were filed after 2016. But if you look at some of the expiry dates on these, like one of these is filed. This one is filing expiring in 2028. This one's expiring in 2032, 2033. So these are actually patents that are extending the protection on Humira, even though we know that Humira has now settled in terms of when biosimilars will enter, which is 2023. So by filtering out, you can get a sense of patents that were filed after a certain period, and that's what this feature is for. And you can see there's actually a fair number of patents that were at least filed, whether they're connected to earlier patents or not, but they were filed after 2016. And similarly, you can do that with the expiry date too. There are a lot of different types of patents, or types of patents that go into a pharmaceutical product. And what we have done is we've categorized them based on reading the claims of the patents that we've actually have in the data set. What I think is really important, what we've done in our work, and certainly with the over-patented reports that we did back in 2018, was to really highlight when patents are filed vis-a-vis the approval by the FDA. So actually, once the US FDA approves a drug and it goes onto market, you would think that the patents that preceded that approval date are the ones that really matter. Well, what we'll see through our data set is there's a lot of patents that are filed after approval, and this filter here is kind of useful to actually understand how many patents are filed on a drug after approval. So, for example, if you wanted to look at Humira and you want to see how many are filed before, you just click those filters and you can actually see the extent of the patenting that was happening before, at least the ones that we found. Similarly, if you want to know what happened after the FDA approval for Humira, you'll probably see that actually there's way more patents that were filed after FDA approval. You can see the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And so we think this is an important feature of the database that really doesn't exist in any database that I've seen public, at least a public database. And you can do that for every other drug. And it's a useful tool to understand how companies are using the patent system, both prior to approval of the drug and afterwards. The final feature that we have in terms of this control panel, if you might want to call it, in terms of where you can filter things out, is patents that appear in the Orange Book or Purple Book. What's important about this feature is that you can see by clicking patents. Say, for example, if you want to see how many of Revlimid's patents are actually on the Orange Book. So here we go. You can see you've got 21 patents that are actually on the Orange Book. But if you were to see how many are actually not on the Orange Book, you'll see that there are actually 185 patents or patent applications. And I should preface that only granted patents feature on the Orange Book and the Purple Book. You can't actually have applications on either of those systems. So basically, that's why you may see a lot more patents that are not on the Orange Book, because this data set comprises of applications, including abandoned ones. So, but what you do find is you do get a sense of that not all patents will feature on the Orange Book or Purple Book, and I think that's an important thing to note, because often people believe that that is the full universe of patents and that's all we should be concerned about. And that was one of the key reasons we built this database, was to help people understand that there is a whole universe of patents out there that don't appear on the public databases that the FDA runs, but also that don't appear even in litigation, but still can be used as deterrents or other ways to actually extract settlements and other things. One thing we didn't show you yet is this particular arrow here provides a little bit more detail about each patent. What you can do is, as I've already demonstrated, you can click on a patent and it will take you to Google Patents. And then if you really want to really dig into the patent, you can even download the PDF. You can get that all from Google Patents. You can look at the claims. This is what the claims are. You can read the actual application. You could download the PDF. For those who are not familiar with Google Patents, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can get all the details of who the applicants and who the assignee is. Lastly, the final feature that I want to show you is the analysis builder or pivot table, which allows you to get all this patent data in the drug patent book in a summarized form, whether it be as a table or a chart form. What I wanted to do is just sort of play around a little bit with this. You can see some of the things that you can actually get from this if you don't want to kind of really look at reams and reams of patent data, but you want to look at some of the statistics. One of the things you can do is you can drag sort of these categories, and there you've already seen that here's a drug and these are the totals. You've got 73 patents for Biktarvy, 43 for Eliquis, and let's look at patent type. And what it does then, it builds this table out for you, and it really breaks down all the data for these different drugs. And you can even then use some of this stuff here, where you can change it into percentages. So what's the percentage of patents in Enbrel that are biomarkers, or crystalline in Biktarvy? I mean, if you look at Revlimid, 6.3% of the patents are crystalline. So you can really work through. And then you can go even further. You can actually create pie charts. You can get the percentage of patents, and here's the key, which gives you all the different color codes for the different types of patents. But we hope that by doing this particular project, we will show that we need more transparency and better information if we're going to make sound policy choices when it comes to the patent system with respect to pharmaceutical products.